That hasn't really happened. I don't think it's going to happen, to be honest with you. But what has happened and what has been fairly successful for Disney in particular is owning a number of complementary streaming services and offering them together in a bundle for, reduced pricing on all three.
Hey gang, it's Tuesday, June 8th. Eric and listeners, welcome to the Behind the Numbers Daily, an eMarketer podcast made possible by VTEX. I'm Marcus, and today I'm joined by one of our senior forecasting analysts. It's Eric Hagstrom.
Thanks for having me, Marcus.
Hey chap, thank you for joining us always. Today's fact: the average US household has 300,000 things in it. 300,000 just things in your house. Might be part of the reason that over the course of our lifetime, we will spend a total of 153 days or 5 months searching for misplaced items. Research has shown that we lose up to 9 items every day, or 200,000 items in a lifetime. The item you're most likely to misplace is... Any guesses?
Your keys? Pens?
Keys is second place. Number 1 is the most important thing to us on the planet Earth.
I hope it's not your wallet or your phone.
The phone. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
The phone, number 1, then keys, then sunglasses, and then paperwork. Who has paperwork? Honey, have you seen my paperwork? Yeah, I left it in 1997 with your MMMBop CD. Who's got paperwork that they're even using? This is crazy. What are we doing? I saw it actually in a good acoustic version of MMMBop recently by Hanson when they were growing up. It wasn't bad. It's a good song. Anyway, today's real topic: who owns everything in media? So, Eric, Recode has a fantastic graphic from May that they update every few months showing the media landscape as if all the different distribution, content, and streaming video companies were planets in the universe. Each planet's size is determined by its market cap. The higher the market cap, the bigger the planet. Disney 21st Century Fox is the biggest planet, followed by Comcast, Verizon, Netflix, and AT&T Warner Media. There are a bunch of smaller planets: Viacom CBS, Charter, Sony Pictures, and others. And each of the planets also have orbiting moons, if you will, or owned properties. For example, the largest Disney 21st Century Fox planet is orbited by owned content: ESPN, Disney Plus, Marvel Studios, etc. Comcast, that planet is orbited by Peacock, Universal Studios, and Sky. And AT&T Warner Media, which is changing, is orbited by HBO, Turner, and Warner Brothers Studios. So, Eric, when you look at the current landscape, what stands out to you?
Well, when you look at the current landscape, the one thing about this chart that I really like is they have all the major tech companies off to the side and they just dwarf everything else.
That's a good point.
And we're talking about kind of the big tech, Apple, Facebook, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, what have you. And they're just in a very different league in terms of size, in terms of revenues, in terms of profitability than a lot of these kind of more older media companies in general. Now, when you talk about Disney, they, as of the printing of this chart, had a little over $300 billion market cap. Apple's around $2 trillion. So just a huge difference in size between these companies. Yeah,
even the smallest of the giants, Facebook, is 3 times the size of Disney, right? And that's the smallest out of Apple, Amazon, Google, and Facebook. This is a great point.
But the other thing too is that, there's distribution and content are kind of separate in a lot of ways. And there are a number of companies in the space, particularly the larger ones, that play in both sides. So Comcast is a major telecom company. They also own NBCU, who's one of the largest media companies in the world. We'll talk later about AT&T and Warner Media. Similar story. Disney really is a pure play media company for the most part, whereas you have some of these other companies as well who are pure play media companies but are just a lot smaller. Your Viacom CBS's of the world, your Fox's of the world, AMC, Lionsgate, the list kind of goes on. And they're actually quite small.
Yeah. Yeah, let's talk about that deal, that company, AT&T Warner Media. On May 17th, Discovery said it was joining forces with Warner Media, which is to be spun off from its owner, telecoms giant AT&T. The new company will be called Warner Brothers Discovery. For context, Warner Media made about 3 times as much money last year as Discovery. AT&T had bought Time Warner in 2016. For the history, a short history, AT&T had bought Time Warner in 2016 for $110 billion, later renaming it Warner Media. They had also bought DirecTV to try and merge the content and distribution of the two, but it didn't work out. The new Warner Brothers Discovery company will be run by Discovery's boss, David Zaslav. The deal isn't expected to close until mid-2022. Eric, your initial reactions to this new company?
Well, when you look at AT&T, they took on a significant amount of debt to purchase DirecTV and then later purchase Time Warner. And they also need to invest quite a bit in their core business as wireless shifts to 5G. So this deal does make sense. They have been spinning off a number of their various properties that they've acquired over the years, including DirecTV, of course, and now Warner Media. So it doesn't come as a surprise. What is a surprise, though, in my mind at least, is the merger with Discovery. It makes a ton of sense on paper. And this is forming one of the larger, cable network owners in the US. And they have a lot of international properties that are quite interesting. And this is going to be interesting as HBO Max tries to, expand internationally. They've had a number of international launches recently, or, will soon have an international launch. But most importantly, one of the questions that kind of comes up again and again when you talk about the streaming industry is, when is someone going to come in and just bundle all of these various new streaming services together, like your kind of traditional cable bundle. Mm-hmm. And that hasn't really happened. I don't think it's going to happen, to be honest with you. But what has happened and what has been fairly successful for Disney in particular is owning a number of complementary streaming services and offering them together in a bundle for, reduced pricing on all three. So Disney has Disney Plus, Hulu, and ESPN Plus, which they bundle together for a reduction on the price of all three. And right now, when you look at Discovery or Warner Brothers Discovery, they now have two assets in HBO Max and Discovery Plus that likely there'll be some sort of bundle in the future, between the same owned and operated platforms.
Yep.
And I think that makes a lot of sense. You can reduce churn without having one mega service that costs a lot. People can kind of pick and choose. And I think it's a really interesting acquisition.
Yep. Yeah, let's quickly talk about, in other news, one of our stories is CNN, mm-hmm. and the second story we're going to bring to you, but let's talk about it now because it's relevant to what you just said. The Wall Street Journal recently reported, story two, the Wall Street Journal recently reported that CNN will launch a new streaming service later this year, informally named CNN Plus, just before Warner Media merges with Discovery. Once merged, the new company called Warner Brothers Discovery, as we just mentioned, will have three streaming offerings. So the two Eric just mentioned, HBO Max, Discovery Plus, and this new CNN Plus, which will be a standalone app. And to your point, Nina Getson, analyst here at Insider Intelligence, was saying that it seems as though Warner Media's taken a page out of Disney's book. They've got three streaming services, and they seem very, very similar. You've got the premium shows, blockbuster movies of HBO Max and the equivalent Disney Plus. Then you've got the larger ad-supported libraries of Discovery Plus for what will be the new Warner Brothers Discovery Company, and then Hulu, which Disney owns. And a way to appeal to traditional TV viewers as well through either sports, ESPN Plus, owned by Disney, or news, which will be the upcoming CNN Plus, which will be owned by Warner Brothers Discovery. So to simplify that, Disney has Disney Plus, Hulu, and ESPN Plus, and Warner Brothers Discovery has and will have HBO Max, Discovery Plus, and CNN Plus, if you can keep all that straight. Eric, what do you make of the idea of a CNN Plus and how that fits into all of this?
When we start talking about this merger, I wouldn't be surprised if various pieces of the puzzle get, shifted around between now and, 2022 when the deal actually closes. So I think a standalone CNN is interesting. I don't think it's a mass market offering. What I do imagine, though, is that, some sort of bundle where you can pay maybe $15, $20 a month, get HBO, get your Discovery content, Food Network, that sort of stuff, as well as CNN is probably a winner in many ways, depending on the price. And then again, you're basically just recreating a large chunk of the cable bundle and selling it D2C, and bypassing, your cable and satellite TV companies.
Yep. Yeah, the bundle seems to be becoming more and more important, or is being seen as somewhat of a strategy model for some of these companies. So yeah, you could get potentially HBO Max, Discovery Plus, and CNN Plus all under the Warner Brothers Discovery umbrella company. CNN Plus, around 40 to 50% of over 55-year-olds watch CTV. 40 to 50% of that older demographic, over 55-year-olds watching CTV. So CNN will be banking on their older audiences to follow them to streaming or attracting new younger audiences who are already there. So interesting to see the potential of a CNN Plus type service.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the important thing too, when you start talking about these direct-to-consumer streamers that are coming from your cable network owners, is that they already have significant audiences and significant revenues and significant profits coming from their cable networks. What they don't have is they are missing out on some of the younger demographics who may not watch a whole lot of linear TV or may not have it, period. So when you start talking about CNN Plus and Discovery Plus, a lot of it's about gaining those incremental audiences over, your kind of traditional pay TV viewers.
Yep. Let's circle back to that deal really quickly. The Economist was pointing out the deal that's going to merge Warner Media and Discovery, creating the new Warner Brothers Discovery entity. The Economist points out that combined, the two companies, Warner Media and Discovery, will form the world's second largest media group by revenue, behind only Disney. However, the merged company, Warner Brothers Discovery, would be the largest company by, number one, content spend, number two, net debt, number three, the share of American cable viewers, with its channels accounting for 29% of viewing time last year, says MoffettNathanson, which expects it to use its size to negotiate better affiliate fees and ad rates. The merged firm also expects to save $3 billion a year in costs. Let's move to a different part of the universe for a second here, Eric. Amazon and MGM. So Amazon's getting ready to pay close to $9 billion for MGM, the studio that makes the James Bond films, the RoboCop films, and also TV shows like Shark Tank. What do you make of this acquisition?
Yeah, I mean, when you start talking about MGM, keep in mind that a lot of their legacy, library, they may not necessarily own the rights to. But what Amazon is getting in this deal is just the capabilities to start monetizing some of these more legacy rights, right? Like they own the rights to James Bond, even though that gets really complicated and dicey. They have a number of other franchises. And more importantly, it keeps MGM out of the hands of a potential competitor. So it prevents someone like Disney or Netflix or, Warner Brothers Discovery from acquiring them.
Interesting defensive play.
Yeah. And I mean, keep in mind too, this is a relatively small purchase for Amazon. They have, I'm not sure what their market cap is offhand, but it's over $1 trillion. They're gigantic.
Yeah, 1.6 according to this graphic. This was from May.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I mean, the other thing too is that media is one of those interesting things for Amazon because they're just monetizing in a completely different way. Everyone else has to basically sell movie tickets or sell, license out your shows, sell subscriptions, that sort of thing. When you start talking about Amazon and their media business, it in some ways seems a little irrational. They're not monetizing in the exact same way. And, kind of is a bit of a meme to say that, yeah, having all these video properties helps Amazon sell more shoes or sneakers or what have you. But the bigger deal with Amazon is that the Prime offering is actually really interesting. When you look at what happens with their ad business, and this is kind of getting into a little bit of a digression here, but when you look at, buying habits between people who have Amazon Prime and don't have Amazon Prime. People who have Amazon Prime obviously buy a lot more on Amazon than people who do not. But more importantly, they start a lot more of their product searches on Amazon instead of something like Google or another retailer's site. Mm-hmm. So what that means is that Amazon can actually sell ads based on that traffic instead of having to pay Google for that traffic coming to their site. And so when you start talking about buying MGM and, building up the media business even more, it's not just about selling more sneakers and selling more socks. It's about selling ads and not having to pay Google for your traffic coming to your site. Especially if, this media stuff can help reduce churn on Amazon Prime specifically or gain new Prime households. It's a little, flimsy, but at the same time, we're talking about billions and billions of dollars. Amazon's the largest ad spender in the US at the moment. But they're also the third largest ad publisher in terms of revenues at the moment. Yeah. So this can move the needle in some pretty big ways for them.
Right. Amazon Prime, yes, the video portion is a tough one because it is one of the perks of their Prime subscription, so to be able to watch videos. But it seems though most people are members of that loyalty program because of the fast and free shipping. It's been suggested that, it does reduce churn. It probably does to some extent, but it's hard to really know how much by. Shiro Overday of the New York Times was writing about this and saying that in a new book by journalist and author Brad Stone, he suggests that actually Prime Video doesn't really incentivize people to renew their memberships each year as much as perhaps we give it credit for, so saying that there's little evidence of a connection between viewing and purchasing behavior. And the truth is that Bezos wanted Amazon to make TV shows and films. So it's really difficult to see how much value it's adding in terms of being a successful standalone business or just being a business which keeps people hooked on Prime. You could also argue it doesn't hurt to have it around, and you definitely have a lot of a big audience there as well, even if you could question their engagement to a certain degree.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I'm sure Amazon's crunched the numbers, and at the end of the day, it's a marketing investment, And what's the quote that I know that half my advertising and marketing efforts work. I just don't know which half. So it's always right. You're taking a risk with a lot of this stuff. But the big takeaway is that Amazon's just playing a different game than everyone else.
Right. And Shiro Overday was also pointing out that there are plenty of other big companies with parts of their business which aren't working out quite how they hoped, whether that's Facebook and what they're doing with WhatsApp, or Google and what they're trying to do with online shopping. So this might just be something that Amazon is going to try to make the most of. Really quickly, circling back to the Amazon MGM deal, Riley Moller and Peter Kafka of Recode think Amazon hopes to turn brands and characters like Rocky and Pink Panther into new shows and movies. So that's something they could do with the acquisition of MGM. Eric, finally on the lead story, how could you see this universe evolving over the next few years?
Well, I think the one thing that we can probably assume will happen is there will be more M&A. I don't know who necessarily is going to buy who. I'm not going to try and speculate on that, but you do have a number of large tech firms, Amazon, Apple, Google, Facebook, Microsoft, who have been making some pretty significant pushes into the media industry. So Apple TV Plus is a great example. Microsoft has been pretty aggressive in M&A with Xbox and their video game group. And there's a lot of companies, your Viacom, CBSs of the world, who are a little bit smaller and are seeing a pretty quickly shifting media landscape. People are cutting the cord. People are watching less TV. TV is still going to be around for the foreseeable future. It's not going away completely. I think we are projecting that last year, roughly 2/3 of all households in the US had a traditional pay TV subscription. And in a couple of years, it's going to drop below 50%. But again, that's still half of all households are paying, $100 a month for cable. But the big deal is that, there's just a lot of question marks around everywhere. And you have a couple companies that have a lot of cash to throw around. And you will likely see some acquisitions along those lines.
Yep.
The other thing that I want to point out, too, is that we have seen a lot of launches of streaming services in the past, 18 months. We don't know if every single one of them will be successful, and each service does have a different bar for success. Let's be honest, it's a little gray, but I wouldn't be surprised if someone decides that, hey, the streaming isn't going the way that I want, and you start to see mergers and acquisitions happen to, help shore up the future of some of these companies.
Yeah. Interesting. The Economist writes, quote, "To compete in this environment," says Michael Nathanson of MoffettNathanson, "a streaming service needs 4 things: scale at home, high quality content, a flexible balance sheet to pay for it and help spread the costs, and, as you were pointing out earlier, Eric, the ability to expand globally," close quote. That's all we've got time for the first half. Time now for the halftime report. We summarize the key takeaways from the lead story in 30 seconds. Eric, what takeaway do you have for us?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, there's going to be more M&A in the space. There's been a lot of M&A in the media industry over the past 5 years. That's not going to change anytime soon.
All right, that's it for the lead story. Time now for In Other News. But first, a quick word from our sponsor, VTEX. Retail's next competitive threat may come from a business model or channel that didn't even exist a few months ago. This modern dynamic requires companies to adapt quickly, pivoting business seemingly overnight, something traditional commerce platforms just can't support. There's a new enterprise commerce platform on the rise, one that's fast, flexible, and doesn't require 9 months and $1 million to get up and running. Go to vtex.com/emarketer to learn more. All right, folks, we are back today in other news. How people's consumption of sports is changing. We already talked about CNN launching a new streaming service, and HBO Max's cheaper ad-supported plan is officially here. Story 1. How people consume sports is changing. One example would be mobile platform Buzzer. They just signed deals with the NBA, NHL, and PGA Tour. Buzzer sends fans personalized notifications so they can quickly pop into live games through existing subscriptions or micropayments. The NBA deal, for example, offers fans 10 minutes of game action for $1 or 2 quarters for $2. Maybe a pitcher is on their way to a no-hitter and you could pay to see them pull it off in the final innings. Another example of how sports are changing would be Top Shot, an online marketplace where sports fans buy and sell video highlights of basketball players. As Kellen Browning of the New York Times explains, quote, Top Shot moments are on a blockchain, digital ledger that records cryptocurrency transactions, making it possible for people to own and exchange them like trading cards. A LeBron James reverse windmill dunk Top Shot, for example, sold for $200,000 in March, close quote. Eric, your thoughts on how people's consumption of sports is changing?
Well, as tech changes, the ways that you can consume sports is going to change. Ultimately, when you look at what has happened in tech and, all the new tech that's around, the ways that people consume sports probably will change a little bit. But keep in mind, live sports is still king, even though highlights are going to be more and more important over time.
Yeah. Things jumped out to me. One, Buzzer, that service, it seems like it would make the first 3 quarters of the basketball game pretty much obsolete, with people just tuning in or paying for like the last 5 or 6 minutes of the fourth quarter, maybe buying some overtime if they needed it. On the Top Shot service, that's interesting because I'm not sure about the rights issues there. Can you own something that was recorded by, say, the NBA or whoever else? Can you own that small clip? Apparently, because it seems to be up and running on the blockchain, but very interested to see how the rights issues work with that. Story 2, we already covered it. CNN launching a new streaming service, CNN Plus. As we mentioned, that would mean that the new company, Warner Brothers Discovery, would have a HBO Max, Discovery Plus, and CNN Plus in a potential bundle. And then you'd also have, similar to how Disney has Disney Plus, Hulu, and ESPN Plus in a bundle. Story 3, HBO Max is cheaper, $10 a month. Ad-supported plan is officially here. As Katie Keck of The Verge notes, this cheaper plan is $5 less than the ad-free original plan, $15, but it does mean giving up 4K quality, offline downloads, and same-day movie premieres. Ad time is capped at 4 minutes per hour for the service, and ads will not play on HBO originals. There are 35 brands that will be advertising on the platform at launch. Eric, how well do you expect this new ad-supported offering to do?
So keep in mind, when you start talking about HBO Max, a significant amount of their subscribers are coming in from, quote-unquote free deals bundled with AT&T wireless subscriptions. So I wouldn't be surprised if this ad-supported plan eventually is the plan that gets bundled in with some of these subscriptions, whereas maybe, a higher wireless deal or a higher price wireless deal would have the ad-free HBO Max. So I think that there probably will be a very large audience for this pretty soon, depending on how they decide to sell it. But there is demand for lower price streaming services. Hulu has done quite a good business selling for, much less than Netflix. And, when you start looking at the economics of it, an ad-supported tier is fantastic. Something like Hulu makes more money from their, ad-supported tier, which costs like $5 or $6 a month, compared to their, ad-free tier, which is closer to $10. Ads are a really great monetization source, especially in streaming video, because CPMs are high, pricing's high. This is a very much in-demand format by advertisers.
And mate, you're spot on. There's an audience for it as well. Some recent Morning Consult research from May suggesting 49% of adults, pretty much half, 49% of adults said they would choose an ad-supported version of a full streaming platform over a more expensive ad-free option. That was compared to the 22% of people who said the opposite. Mm-hmm. So nearly 2.5 times the number saying, I'll take the ad-supported version if you don't mind. That's all we've got time for this episode. Thank you to my guests. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, mate. Thank you to everyone listening. Thank you to Victoria, who edits the show. Nicole Perrin, we'll see you tomorrow for the Behind the Numbers ad platform, a new marketer podcast made possible by VTEX.